All right, welcome to episode 184, I think.
Yep.
We're on 184.
That sounds right.
The art check, the 48-hour art check. So, yeah, pretty crazy. We were talking ukes or ukuleles before starting. Yeah, you want to get into it?
Sure. Get into ukes more, or just kidding?
No. The pants out of the viewers and stuff, but at the same time, I am enjoying acquiring a new ability and trying to learn ukulele. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Most of the trouble for me is just the chord pad, just fighting the urge, like when I read G, to like do a guitar G as opposed to the ukulele thing.
Yeah.
But other than that, like the strumming patterns are kind of similar. It's a lot more sensitive than a guitar. So it's more similar to like playing a classical guitar because it's got a lot of like nylon thing. But for me, the big struggle is like just figuring the chords out. But luckily, I don't have to deal with a lot of the beginner trouble, like developing calluses, like having to press the strings hard enough. Like if I hear if I don't hit a note, I know it's because I am holding the chord wrong, not So it's kind of, I don't know. So there's some beginner stuff that I'm not having to struggle with, but it's still a learning curve. So it's really weird to play an instrument where the top string is higher than, and I know you can do alternate tuning and stuff, or change the top string to a deeper string, but I want to learn it the way it is in standard tuning. And that is weird for an instrument to have for me, it just feels weird to have a higher note at the top.
Yeah. Well, you can, GCEA is standard tuning, but you can do a drop G that's just an octave lower. It's still considered standard tuning, and all of the chords are the same. It's just an octave lower.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm gonna have to mess with it.
We'll have to. Well, we gotta talk visuals. We can't do another uke show.
Yeah, let's do visuals. So, so what'd you get done?
So I had just finished. Doing this animation, and what I got done is I actually went through and I decided to put a little bit more effort into my online stuff, and so I did this as a tutorial. And so I went through and did those carousel, designer carousel things that everybody's doing nowadays.
Yeah.
So kind of went through and designed this as a tutorial on how I use the plugin to animate and rig this particular character. And I'm actually going to try to see if I can get multiple examples out of it. But I tried to make it as helpful as possible and then do a much longer description.
Nice.
Because I'm trying to fight what I normally do, which is finish something, slap it up there, move on.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what happened here. I finished it. I took a shot of what it looked like really fast, but this didn't take any time at all.
Yeah.
And then I had just recorded this or whatever. So this is just kind of the basic post that I normally do. And so this one, where I went through and I did 10 slides in the carousel, and each one was carefully designed, and I made sure I'm adding value. I'm actually getting quite a few good results from this.
Cool.
Compared to normal. Normally I'll pick up 1 or 2 followers on a post, but I'm upwards of around 10, and it's only been about a day.
Yeah.
And so I'll probably keep running with this type of posting, just because I think I need to spend more time on promotion and treat myself as if I'm a client. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice, and I think that does look like it'll add more value, and I think that it's really cool.
Yeah.
Plus,
So
it looks very designed and thought out, which is good.
yeah. So keep an eye out for more tutorials, I guess, on stuff that I'm doing, because I actually didn't mind that. I really hate doing YouTube tutorials. I get a ton of response on my YouTube tutorials compared to like all the other type of YouTube content, but I still like it. But like on Instagram, it's kind of quick and dirty, and you're not doing like a deep dive. It's just kind of like you just go in and you do like here's a couple screenshots of what you should be looking at and what you should be doing, and I don't know, it's not as in depth, so it was a lot easier, and I feel like my intended audience is probably more on Instagram than they are on YouTube as far as like potential clients and things like that.
Yeah.
Instagram is just more of a visual channel than YouTube is. So
No, that makes perfect sense.
yeah.
I think that's super smart. So if you guys are watching this, help Cory continue to like grow his Instagram and go and like all of this stuff too. Because I think it's definitely good. It's definitely good.
Yeah, and I forgot I was doing this. I've also started to organize, like you can save these stories and organize them. And so I've actually gone back and started to like get like links to all of the posts where I'm doing different things. So like here's all the animation posts. So like you can go in and you can so it's kind of like bookmarking.
Yeah.
So if somebody comes and is new to Instagram, to my Instagram profile, they could be like, all right, what's this guy about? It's like, oh, here's some speed drawings, here's some inking, here's some animation, and they can start to like see, all of the posts that are kind of related to like last year's Inktober,
smart,
or whatever. And so, as I do it, I'm just gonna go in, and if you click on this, then it'll take you like directly to that post.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's kind of my, it's the type of stuff I just really hate doing, but it's also like the type of stuff that's gonna get me a little bit more traction on what I want. So a lot of just organizing and strategy on the social media side of things. So
smart. And honestly, like I do think that's like one of those eating your vegetables type things where you'll be like, oh, I'm kind of thankful I did that,
Right. Yeah.
Because it's weird, but it's like it will take less effort than it took to create the thing you're promoting, but it does take a little bit more effort, and then with that extra effort, you will probably gain a lot more followers.
I hope so. Yeah. So,
I mean,
anyway, and then on top of that, I have rough sketches for the next 2 animations. I've got finished illustrations for a 3rd, and halfway done on the illustrations for a 4th. So I've got the next probably 3 to 4 weeks worth of work kind of mapped out, at least. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So how about you?
So I will show it, but I am like this far on the crowd scene, and so basically probably about 3/4 of the way done with that first panel. So yeah,
nearing the end.
Yes, close to the end. Close to the end.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and then it's going to be a whole lot of like figuring things out and potentially, it's going to be interesting. Try not to think about it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But I do think organizing your posts more is a very smart idea, and that does make me feel like I should probably do it as well.
Yeah. We might give me a week or so doing this, and I think it would probably be pretty beneficial to like do an art check just on Instagram, because I I've been really looking into it, and I'm getting to the point where I think I've got some advice that might be kind of helpful. And I mean, we'll see if it bears fruit, but so far, just some minor changes. I'm seeing I kind of plateaued, and I'm seeing this little spike of followers.
Good.
So if I can maintain that kind of steady growth, I think it'll mean that I'm kind of onto something. So
yeah. And I do always encourage even myself, because to me, my Instagram, I just kind of throw stuff up there. And I do think that the reality that good design and well thought out design affects sales and following makes sense.
Yeah.
Because that's our industry. That's what we do professionally. So it makes sense that we'd want to do it for ourselves. That's a good idea. Cool. All right. So what were your challenges?
Same challenges as before, and will probably continue to be the same for the next 4 or 5 weeks. I don't have much of a rush season, but this is a heavier semester than normal. And so that's just kind of carrying into things. This is like, as I sat down to go live, is the first time I got down to my studio today. So it's just time consuming, lots of time consuming stuff. And I've been super tired lately. I don't know what's going on, but I'm crashing at 8 p.m. and then I'll wake up again at 10 and then try to get some work done and then go to bed. That's happened 3 or 4 times in the last week. So I don't know what's going on, but just it's just eating into my normal production time is kind of what's happening. But I'm still getting stuff done, and I'm stealing little bits, little moments where I can get. And that's the nice thing about the iPad Pro is I can still kind of move the needle a little bit, during meetings or commutes or whatever. So
that's really cool.
Frank said he read the entire comic in a day and is eagerly awaiting the last page.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very excited. Hope you liked it. It'll be good, I hope.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to do what Frank did, you can just go to quarterlystories.com. I highly recommend it. It's a good read. It's really well written and really interesting. And it is not a normal comic in that, kind of fun and fluffy. It's a serious work of literature. It just also happens to be drawn, which is cool. So how about you for challenges?
Yeah, I feel like once again we're kind of completely in sync. To me, I've been exhausted and kind of getting to the point where I kind of put in a request for some vacation, and I'm going to be taking about a week, a little over a week off, around the Thanksgiving holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really in need of it. I'm at that point of I'm just exhausted, mentally, physically, just kind of getting really wiped out. So that's been a challenge, but still kind of keeping with it, trying to keep with exercising and stuff. It probably didn't help that I kind of binge watched Mandalorian on Disney Plus, and I've been kind of just browsing around on Disney Plus. So I definitely, but luckily I'm kind of glad they didn't have the whole season. I'm glad it's going to be weekly.
Right.
That will keep me in check. And then it's just the main thing is just trying to stay focused, trying to stay awake, trying to stay alert and get stuff done. That's been a bit of a challenge. So
yeah.
What are your plans for next art check?
So let's see. By the next art check, I will have. I don't know which one I'll be in the mood to finish, but I will either finish the fish animation, where the fish opens his mouth and the skeleton pops out, and then the skeleton opens his mouth and a bug comes out. Or I will finish this one where this burger is actually a monster eyeball. I don't know how to describe that one, but it'll be kind of a mixed media of live action video and animation. And so I will finish one of those two by the next time we meet.
That is super exciting. Yeah. So, I forgot to mention my progress too. So last night I also tracked vocals for another song. So we're like 3 songs, vocals done. So we have about 4 songs left to track. And then we're done, and then it's all mixing and stuff, which is kind of fun. But my goal for next week, or I guess it will be next week, would be I definitely need to be done with this page by the next time we do an art check. I'm gonna be done with it, and at least be at the point of maybe like scanning it that night, that at minimum. So
that's it, man. That's the end of the road. It's awesome.
Yeah, there's a couple things. I mean, it's weird because it's like that's it for the interiors, but there are a couple things and design things that I need to create. So
sure.
There's months of work after that before it can get to like promotion, running a Kickstarter and stuff like that. But yeah, it's pretty exciting to get to that point. The other more daunting thing is it's book 1 and there's 2 books. So that's going to be interesting too.
Is it going to be another 5 years on the second book?
I'm guessing not, because I think I have a more consistent workflow, and so I don't think it will take that long.
Cool,
but who knows?
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I mean, it seems like you're about a page a week or a page every week and a half lately, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, this one is taking you maybe a little over 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, at that rate, you're about 100 pages, right? I mean, so that's more like 2.5 years. I mean, almost twice as fast as what you did the first half in.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And I think if I kind of plan it, I don't know. I think I'll do some back planning and kind of map it out.
Yeah.
With some structure and stuff, but obviously I'm going to take some time off from the creating of the book to promote and properly give this thing a shot. So yeah. All right. Do we want to do like a topic? I mean, I am beat, but I'm open to talking about something. If there's
I'm down to talk about something. Anybody in the chats want us to hit a topic or have any suggestions? And while we're waiting for people to answer, Frank talking about quarterly stories is saying, yeah, I was able to connect with it. I've been in similar situations with depression and mental illness. And that's one of the things I really like about your book is it like, it's very relatable. Even if you haven't dealt with exactly those situations, I mean, it's just very human and very real. You get a lot of like polished, shiny stuff out there, and people gloss over things, and that's definitely not that book. So, but it also doesn't feel like it's like exaggerated or kind of like played up for like dramatic effect. It just felt very relatable. So
cool.
Yeah. So I like that.
That's the aim. So I'm glad it's getting close to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks for reading it. Like I'm always happy to have people read work.
Yeah. We don't have any suggestions from the chats. Any quick topics that are kind of on your mind? Want to just talk about the Mandalorian for a couple minutes?
We could. I don't have much on that other than, well, let's talk about it. Sure.
We could, unless you want to talk about something else.
No, I kind of dig it. I think, yeah, I thought it was good. I was impressed by it. It's very corny, but like in all the right ways for a Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
I really like the new characters that were kind of thrown in.
Yeah.
Particularly, like I don't know his name, but the character you were quoting on Twitter.
Apparently, he's a Jawa. He's an off-world Jawa.
Huh.
That's what he's billed as on IMDb.
Wow.
And he is not. I mean, I can see like that he's got the goggles that the Jawas would wear, but like, I'm just used to them being like shrouded in, shrouded in shadow, and having glowing eyes, and so that's not what I expected a Jawa's face to look like. But I liked him a lot. I thought it was really cool, though. It's still really hard for me to believe that he's a Jawa because he doesn't have the super high pitched voice.
Yeah.
Like they speak their own language.
Yeah, I mean, I had heard, and this is something I think I might be remembering from like books or something, but I thought Jawas, it's like flies supposedly that they're covered in. Like, I think there's some kind of thing with that. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, like I'm sure there are people who have the canon down way more. But yeah, no, that's a stretch, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
I like Werner Herzog being in the trilogy because I like Werner Herzog doing anything. He's pretty awesome.
He was great. And then you've got you had Salacious B. Crumb. His species made an appearance at a barbecue. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, little rough, little depressing if you're a Salacious fan.
Right. And he's that little dude that hangs out next to Jabba the Hutt and just kind of screams like or whatever. Yeah, he's just kind of like a little lech. But he was in a cage, and one of his I don't know if it was him, but a species like that was being roasted over a spit. I thought that was kind of a fun little nod. Apparently it takes place 5 years after the Empire fell, and some number of years before Episode 7, I guess it would be, right? The one where Rey and everybody starts showing up, the newer stuff.
Yeah. It's got some really interesting stuff going on. And I felt like some of the effects were a little corny, but it's still really good. Like it just kind of felt very, very true to the original.
Yeah.
I liked the droid character.
IG-11.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that was incredible. I mean, if you look at like the movement that they were able to do.
Yeah, the animation of that was very cool.
Yeah, that was just that was amazing. I mean, because I've seen those type of droids like traditionally animated, and they fight really cool. Like if you look at like not the Clone Wars that everybody knows that Disney did, but the Clone Wars like back in the early 2000s that the Cartoon Network did, they were actually webisodes about 2 or 3 minutes long. And they were animated by the guy that did Samurai Jack. He's in those and moves that way in those, and those look awesome.
Yeah.
But I mean, seeing that like quote unquote live action where it's more like CG.
Yeah.
It was great. I mean, it was really mechanical movement, but it was like just a lot of spinning. And I mean, I think his head originally was made out of like old World War II mortar shells.
Huh.
And I think they like kind of like rebuilt that.
Huh.
So I thought that was really cool. So anyway, there was just like the interesting thing about it that I really enjoyed was that I'll show you. I'm going to just do some Google searches here. But you can see like his head, and he kind of just spins. I don't know. Let's see if we can get some animated GIFs here. But the assassin droids, they're kind of like built out of like spare parts that like George Lucas would like find on different sets and things. I mean, and back in the day, you had like the original like spaceships and stuff. They would take like what is that game? They just bought hundreds of You Sank My Battleship games, and then just glued the pieces to like spray painted. Like they would take a piece of plywood and spray paint it gray, and then just glue thousands of like Battleship playing pieces to it, and then that would become and then they'd just fly a camera over the top of it, and it was a spaceship.
Yeah, and I think they also collected a lot of just models and just like dissected different model kits and just took like crap parts from that. The blasters that they made were like made out of like actual guns, but then like some of them had like different sprinkler parts like attached to it, and like just kind of anything goes. But I think that's one of the charms of Star Wars, is that the world feels kind of built and like it was made out of something like kind of that you could conceivably imagine. Whereas I think, Star Trek went really slick with everything.
Right.
Star Wars kind of took that turn where it was like, no, these ships break down. They're old. They have some age to them. They have like vents and just weird stuff attached to them. And that's one thing I liked about this, was it had that feel of like a used world, like a world that was used.
Yeah.
I also like the mystery of it. Like I'm kind of curious to know where they're going to go with the plot. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. And I mean, I think one of the you kind of hit this on the head, but like prior to Star Wars, I mean, we were still in that kind of like what are they? I think now we call it retro future, but the idea in the 50s was kind of like a carryover from the 30s, where everybody just thought of like the Jetsons. Like that was kind of like what, in the 80s, the Jetsons was kind of like a throwback to what people thought of in the 50s of the future, where they'd all be flying cars and everybody is super shiny. I actually have collected 50s and 60s, a bunch of old like Popular Mechanics magazines and stuff like that. And like everybody back then was obsessed with like bubbly things, like really round, like nothing was straight. Everything was round and shiny. Every car was supposed to be an amphibious car, or a car that could like transform into a plane. I mean, there was a lot of like amphibious vehicles and things like that. And they were always talking about like the cars of the future or whatever. And we have already passed, when people in the 1950s thought we would have like flying cars and things. But the aesthetics were really interesting because, I mean, you have like everything. I mean, if you look at like Buck Rogers in the 25th century, like everything was like shiny, hyper chrome, and like as if every shot was as if the spaceship had just been buffed and polished, and had a chrome, and it looked like everything looked like Padme's like royal cruiser, that was just like, that was all of the spaceships. And then Star Wars came along and they were like, what if we consider these spaceships to be more like cars? And, there's going to be a lot of junkers. There's going to be a lot of like just rust buckets and whatever. And so like they looked really interesting, but they also like distressed them as if they like had exhaust ports, and that they would get burnt and they would get dirty, and, like entering and exiting the atmosphere would cause distress and whatever. And so anything in the Star Wars universe just looked like like a broken down used car lot.
Yeah.
Whereas everything else, and that's that authenticity and realism really was one of the things that set it apart.
Yeah, and I think like, you know, just even like the idea of, I think like prior to that, like space battles were kind of set up. I mean, they did compare kind of the idea of like a spaceship to like, naval craft and stuff like that. But I think it's like Star Wars was one of the first to actually make the like crafts look like they have like the kind of wear that a ship would have at a dock,
Mm-hmm.
And then like the big interesting thing too is just like even the way the ships fought, like having the dogfights in space actually mimic real dogfights from like World War II.
Right.
And like a lot of the choreography and stuff, having it mimic like real life battles. And then just getting rid of the big orb bubble like look to everything. Although honestly, the Buck Rogers like mid-century modern stuff is great. I actually found this out when I went to Seattle last year, but I guess that the Jetsons was based on the Space Needle. So
that makes sense.
the guy who made the Jetsons traveled to the World Fair, saw the Space Needle, and he was like, "That's what everything's going to look like. That's the whole future." And so I think that is one of those things like that. That building was what at one point they thought all buildings would look like,
Yeah.
But I do love mid-century modern, and like there is something cool about that aesthetic too. So
yeah, no, there's a lot about it that I really like. But I mean, I think mainly what is endearing about mid-century modern aesthetic is that it is so massively unrealistic. It is just like, it's the epitome of like hope. When you think of like humanity, mid-century modern is like, what if everything were just incredibly amazing and didn't need a functional purpose? It was just, and so you just have this idea of just like everything being incredible and shiny. It's not, and I'm sure there were good times and bad times, but I mean, it's not like it was a great time for everybody. But they sure make it feel like that when you look at like the aesthetics of things. And so anyway, it's kind of interesting, but I do really like mid-century modern.
Oh yeah. This is actually a Disney catalog that I have from like the map they used to hand out. And if you look at the right here, this guy.
Yeah.
That guy used to walk around Disneyland. I'm like, bring that guy back. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Well, I mean, that guy could be like, like one of the chief engineers in Buck Rogers. Like he would fit right in. And the girl next to him in like the pointless cape.
Right.
That's perfect.
Yeah. It's so I would love to kind of bring back that. Actually, it would be fun to do a story in that kind of format, like the world of the future kind of thing.
Yeah.
Cool. So, so you liked it then?
Yeah, I liked it. The one thing that I thought was really interesting, I've been having some conversations on Twitter with some people, but the pacing of it was significantly different than most Star Wars things that have existed.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it was a slow burn. Like most Star Wars things, like you jump in, whether it's the cartoons, whether it's the movies or whatever. I mean, you start in the middle of a fight in space, or you start where it's just like you're awed by this giant battleship or whatever. And this one like started really small. It was just like a guy getting roughed up in a bar. And then we just kind of slowly wandered through this guy's day. I mean, I think that was one day.
Yeah.
And it was just very calm. And there were the occasional peaks of of kind of movement, but I mean, it was a ton of world building and a lot of foreshadowing.
Yeah,
because they were dropping hints about stuff. You know, there are all the Easter eggs for like the Uber fans where we get to be like, oh, I recognize that guy, and oh, I know what they're talking about there. But then a ton of it was just like foreshadow or kind of like hooks for retcons where they're, you know, like I think when George Lucas originally wrote Star Wars, like he had no idea what the Clone Wars were. I think he just thought those two words were interesting, and so he just like had Obi-Wan just say it.
yeah,
And then later on, you know, 2 or 3 decades later, he retconned in this idea of like, you know, stormtroopers being clones and blah blah blah. And they did seem to be like laying a lot of hooks for possible retcons, or this series is going to get really weird and crazy, which is also a good possibility. And then, without spoiling it for anybody, I am very, very excited to see what they do with the last scene.
Yeah, I'm like, that one actually has me completely baffled and curious and interested.
Let's talk about it. If you have not seen Mandalorian, giant spoiler alert, turn the video off now because I'm about to spoil the first episode. Huge giant spoiler. Spoiler warning. You've been warned sufficiently. Okay, so for those of you that have seen it, we get a baby Yoda.
Yeah,
at the
what
end.
the heck? And then I was like, the whole time I'm like, is that like another like Yoda? Is that gonna be like a Yoda type? Like what Yoda has relative? I thought Yoda was just like a very extremely old dude. Like,
and so Yoda
so old that he just became like a Yoda like figure, you know?
Oh, because do you remember Yaddle?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
true.
so Yaddle was originally designed to be a young Yoda, but then they're like, it kind of looks actually like a different person. And so instead of just tossing the character, they put Yaddle on the Jedi Council. And so there are 2 Yoda and Yaddle both exist as this type of species that apparently are so powerful in the Force that they both ended up as like one of the 12 people on the Jedi Council.
Yeah.
You know, and
so who's this new dude?
Well, one, he's 50 years old and he is apparently still an infant.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of speculation of whether or not like he's like Yoda's kid. Like, did Yoda and Yaddle have a kid? And I don't think that works at all, because Yoda was a pretty devout Jedi, and Jedi during the era where he was a Jedi, or at least the end of his life, were very much not into like, you know, relationships and procreation and stuff like that. Kidnapping children is fine, but not having children. So I don't think it's one of his kids. Also, he died when he was 899 years old.
Yeah.
And so you can assume that if this kid is 50, Yoda would have been 45 years before Yoda died. So it would be kind of like a 95-year-old man having a baby.
Yeah.
Which is technically possible. And we don't really know anything about Yoda's species. But I don't think it's one of his kids. But I do think that somewhere there is a species, maybe super rare, because if you think about like creatures that live to a century,
like
the birth rate's got to be pretty low, or they would just overrun whatever ecosystem they're in.
That's true, and they won't really have the biological imperative to like reproduce on a mass scale, because they'll be like, I'm around for a while.
Right. Yeah. I'll just have a kid every like 500 years or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, we also know that they are powerful, but not necessarily naturally predisposed to be good, because and this is where I show my real nerd colors here. The unaired episodes of the Clone Wars animation. Have you seen the last 2 or 3 that they ran on Netflix that they didn't run on the air?
No, and well, the answer is yes, but Clone Wars, unfortunately, I've only really seen everything once, and so my memory of it is very mixed. So
Okay,
my memory on it.
All right, so the Yoda in the prequels and the Yoda in most of the Clone Wars cartoon is a different person from the Yoda in the original trilogy. It's the same person, but they have different personality traits in that the Yoda on Dagobah is like a pacifist. He's telling Luke not to carry his weapons with him.
Yeah, he's but in Clone Wars, he's more of like a fighter, right?
Yeah, he's a fighter. He's a general. I mean, he's commanding troops. He's one of the ones like him and Mace Windu were like, all right, well, we got this clone army. Let's go to war. Let's do it. And to bridge the gap between those two ideologies, there are these 3 episodes that never aired on television, but were released on Netflix after Netflix picked up Clone Wars, where Yoda goes to the source of the Force, like the planet where the Force comes from.
Okay.
Where Anakin went and faced whatever. He goes there to try to figure things out, and he faces a dark version of himself. And so the dark side of the Force produces, I guess you would call it like an alternate version of him, of what would happen if he had chosen to go to the dark side rather than the light side.
So similar to Luke kind of facing his dark self.
Right. And so he has kind of that moment in the cave, except it is super intense. And basically, if Yoda were to go to the dark side, which is kind of the path that he was on because he was promoting war.
Yeah.
And basically they were saying, because Qui-Gon figured out how to be a Force ghost. Prior to Qui-Gon, people would not retain their identity once they died in the Force. They would become one with the Force. And then once Qui-Gon died, he went through a series of rituals because he was more of a gray Jedi than he was like a light side or dark side Jedi.
Yeah.
Which is why he was never on the council. And so he kind of was outside of these rigid structures that people made up. Anyway, so he was able to figure out how to retain his identity after death inside the Force, and basically invented Force ghosts. And apparently there is some sort of ritual or teachings or something that you can do after death to become a Force ghost. And so Yoda, he pulls Obi-Wan aside and is like, hey, your old master has been in contact with me. And he's got some things to teach you. And so Qui-Gon started teaching specific Jedi how to become a Force ghost after they die. And so anyway, as part of that process, Yoda needed to travel to the source of the Force and become one with the Force, which he couldn't do as long as he was promoting war. And so he had to face and reject the dark side that was within him that he was toying with as he was battling things.
Got it.
And he literally faced what he would be like if he turned dark. And he's basically a super pissed, hyper powerful, crazy, angry gremlin creature that's all dark and nuts.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. And so really interesting stuff. I'm going to see if I can find an image of that.
So then is this, so it's going to be interesting because the timeline that this exists in, this could be the younger iteration of somebody who will appear in one of the later Star Wars movies.
Right.
I don't know. I'm enjoying I'm enjoying the fact that it's a TV show and it's paced slower.
Right.
But wow, I got to see that episode.
Yeah, it's. I mean, this is Yoda fighting Dark Yoda,
Ooh,
and it's pretty interesting.
And I really thought the Clone Wars was so well written.
Yeah, the first season, first 2 seasons are kind of whatever, but like third season, once they start jumping into and they get, and I think two of the most interesting things in the Star Wars universe are the Mandalorians. And so like I'm super excited about that we're getting to explore that. Yeah. And the other thing that we got introduced to was like an old Marvel comic. They were like, it was just like this writer went off into the woods, had nothing to do with anything, but he was like, hey, what if instead of being Jedi and Sith, what if there's just a coven of Force witches? And so you have the Night Sisters, which are like all this little coven of like crazy evil, like Force wielding witches that use like dark magic instead of like, but it's fueled by the Force. Anyway, Clone Wars picked that up, and that's where like Asajj Ventress comes from.
Yeah.
And that's where Darth Maul comes from. That planet is actually a female-dominated planet, and the subservient gender is the males, and Darth Maul and Darth, what is his brother, the yellow one?
Oh, I can't remember.
Maul, and it'll come to me. Anyway, they are from that planet, but they were sold into slavery to Dooku by the Night Sisters. And anyway, Asajj Ventress is like an assassin that was kind of like an orphaned Night Sister that like left and then came back. And anyway, I'm hoping we get some live action Night Sister stuff, because that is the creepiest and darkest thing that Star Wars has ever done, is to kind of dive into this stuff. I mean, it's like the way that like they're casting these spells, and they have this like this bass delayed reverb on their voices and stuff. Well, like all of this like green dark magic Force smoke is like just like corrupting people. It's crazy. Do you remember those episodes?
No, I might have missed those. I'm
all right.
Trying to think if I've even seen those.
Yeah, it's anyway, 2 of my favorite things, and one of them is now like live action, where we're going to get to know, because the other thing that happened is like in the Clone Wars is that Mandalore was at civil war between like the old version of Mandalorians, which were warrior, mercenary, kind of feudal clan type things that are constantly trying to overtake each other. I can't remember what they're called, the Black Hand or something like that, and like a republic, and Obi-Wan's love interest is the president of Mandalore, and she's Sabine, I think. I haven't watched Rebels yet, but I think she's a character in Rebels. Anyway, so two of the planets that I'm super interested in, are kind of like showing up in this new stuff. So
exciting.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I could obviously talk about it for a really long time, but I am very interested to see more about Baby Yoda, because we don't know what species he is. We don't know what planet he's from.
Yeah.
We have no information about him at all, other than we know his age and his name. But like George Lucas specifically never mentioned anything about it, because he wanted him to be like shrouded in mystery.
Yeah.
And I don't know, he's not going to be shrouded in mystery anymore. And a lot of people are kind of mad about that, but I think it's great. I love it.
I think it's fascinating, and it'll be fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've done it. We've done quite a bit on Mandalorian and on Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I think we're good. So thanks for everybody who has joined us in the chats. I hope you guys are watching Mandalorian, and if you are, let us know your thoughts on it. I think overall we were pretty impressed. It's just kind of a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's great, and the fact that like, dialogue. What's that?
Like they keep him pretty quiet.
Yeah,
it really is fun, and kind of feels like a little Boba Fettish, like with just the vibe of like, the silent mercenary. So it's kind of rad in that sense too. It's very like, it's a low key feel for a Star Wars film, which makes sense because they can kind of do that. They have the pacing allowed and stuff, so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
could be. I hope they don't go the clone route. So tired of the clone route.
Yeah, I've heard this theory as well, that it could be a clone of Yoda. I don't think it is for a number of reasons, but I can get into those later. What's that?
Maybe it's a nephew of Yoda. Maybe there's going to be a second Star Wars Christmas special, and we're going to meet the whole Yoda family.
This is the first time in canon that Life Day was mentioned, and so as long as you don't, if you don't consider the Star Wars Christmas special canon, which it is not, this is the first canon mention of Life Day, which is what this Christmas special is about. So
it's canon to me.
That is one of the worst things that has ever been produced in the history of.
It's wonderful. That and like we will never be able to outlive that
Battle for Endor.
Yeah, or just Star Wars disco theme.
What is that?
The disco Star Wars theme. It was like huge in the 70s. It's like it's a disco cover of Star Wars. It's amazing.
Okay, I'm definitely gonna have to look that up. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, it's Star Wars Christmas specially.
Okay.
But it's kind of addictive. It's good to put on a car trip if you wanna.
Oh wow, that is. I mean, just the images there. That's amazing. Is that related to Star Wars? Star Wars?
No, that was like a single that was released when Star Wars had just come out, and I'm not sure if it was officially affiliated. I mean, they must have had permission to do it, but it was like a top 10 hit at the time because everybody was about Star Wars and cocaine and disco.
Wow.
So I think that kind of fused all three of those into like one recording session.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's part of the canon in my mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, that's true. Those are great games.
They're good games.
Really good games. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad we are able to be in this era of like Star Wars nerddom.
Yeah,
it was good times.
I am.
Is that what Kayla's talking about?
Say that again.
Style?
Yeah, I think she's talking about doing mid-century modern or future forward.
Totally good. If you're gonna do that, check out. Like for one thing, the cool thing about mid-century modern is there's this whole movement that like paralleled it cartoon modern, which is excellent. And so like check out like Mr. Magoo and UPA and like stuff from that era is
McBoing Boing.
Yeah, I mean, even Moose and Squirrel, right? Like the backgrounds for that are excellent. So yeah, check that out because it can be a really fun style to work with where you're kind of playing with a lot of it's like playing with shape, with pattern, and like trying to intentionally not do things in perspective, like to actually play with overlaps. And one of my favorite things about cartoon modern too is intentional tangents, which is a whole fun thing to play with, where you can have like intentionally make tangents on like a background. It's a lot of fun. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, before we jump into another thing and start talking about the UPA, let's cut it.
Topic. Let's talk Cartoon Modern maybe next time.
I think I'm gonna take Kayla up on that challenge. I think maybe one or two of the animations I'll do in kind of a Cartoon Modern style.
Oh man, that would be excellent. And when we're done tracking our songs, I'm gonna have to convince you to do a music video. Maybe
4 minutes is a long time, but yes, I've actually had that thought a few times. I think you're the one song about stealing the election. I've had images in my mind of what that could be like. I think it could be really funny.
There's a couple fun ones. There's a weird one about a shipwreck after it's taken over by the crew, and it's pretty cool. It's like a mutiny on the Bounty kind of thing.
Oh, cool!
Pretty fun.
Yeah,
that's the one we tracked yesterday, and was a headache to track because it's like long. But anyhow, so we are really rambly today. But
yeah,
I think that happens when we're sleepy too.
Right.
But it's been fun to go down these tangents, and I do think they're related to what we do because, like thinking about like things like Star Wars, like why you like it. What was it like for me? The thing that I took from Mandalorian that I might apply to my own work is it's really fun to see something that's patient with its pacing.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that about that. I think the most out of it was the fact that it's very patient and doesn't assume the audience isn't right. And
right.
that's kind of a cool thing. So anyhow, let's talk UPA next time.
Okay.
Thanks for everybody who joined us in the chats. Kayla, when you do your mid-century modern thing, which you're going to do, right? Post a link here, next art check or whatever.
We'll feature it.
Yeah,
that'll be cool.
And I hope everybody's having a good week, and I hope you guys are art checking with other people, and we will see you guys next art check. Yeah. And you saw